Welcome back to Banking on Cannabis, the podcast where we talk with the leaders who are shaping the operational, financial, strategic future of the cannabis industry. I'm your host, Terry Mendez. I'm the CEO of Safe Harbor. Operators use our financial platform to bank, borrow, operate, and grow. Today, we're diving into one of the most important and persistent challenges in the cannabis industry, cash management at the point of sale. Cannabis, as we all know, is still heavily a cash-based business. This creates friction for our customers, operational burdens for our staff, and real challenges around visibility, security, and efficiency. That's where ATMs have become a critical part of the retail environment and infrastructure. Today, we're joined by Vince Mosca. See, hopefully I said that right, Vince.
Yes, sir.
Co-founder of ATM Pros, one of the leading ATM providers in the cannabis industry, and a Safe Harbor partner. He helps dispensaries solve real cash access and cash handling challenges every single day. He's also the co-founder of Highly Analytical, which builds on the ATM footprint by adding AI, data, and intelligence across inventory, fraud detection, and advertising. Welcome, Vince.
Great to be here. Thanks, Terry.
So let's get started with ATM Pros. You've built a strong presence here in the cannabis industry, something every dispensary relies on. I don't know that I've been in a dispensary that didn't have an ATM machine. ATMs seem quite simple, but you're an insider. Tell me a little bit about the transaction flow, how you work with operators. Give me a little background on your business.
I will take it back about 9 years now, which feels really weird to say. I was in a room with a dispensary out here in Arizona that I was consulting with and their bank. And they were describing their cash needs. And they said, we need an ATM. We're going to grab an ATM and we're going to run it. And the bank said, no, you're not. You will not take state legal dollars and put it into that ATM, allow people to transact on it and put it back into our bank. So with that, I chimed in and said, you need a third-party ATM provider. And then I went home, I got an EIN, I went to Kinko's at 3 a.m., got some business cards, a flyer, and because they had asked me if I know anybody, and I did. A guy that I knew at Arizona State as an athlete, he and his brother had a company going for about 15 years. Called him, he did my dad's cafeteria's ATM, and I go, hey, how'd you like to put some ATMs in dispensaries? And he said, I would like to do that. So we were born out of that conversation for a necessity of a kind of separation between banks and stuff. Now, a lot of that's changed over the years and things have gotten a little bit more open for the operators, but it really comes from a commitment to compliance and regulation. That's really what's, I think, kept us on the forefront of being a provider for dispensaries.
That's awesome. So what do you tell your ideal customer? What do you tell the ideal customer to close the sale?
I would let them know that they are in the cannabis business. They know terpenes, they know grows, they know the pains of a master grower, front-end retail, supply chain. They get to deal with a lot of problems. One thing they don't need to deal with is their ATM going down. If they're trying to juggle it and do it on their own, it can be done. But the issue comes in when you have a big holiday weekend and you can't get to the bank to fill your vault up. Now, all of a sudden, you've got a holiday weekend and people are getting pissed and they'll just leave. So for us, I think the thing that we pride ourselves on the most is our uptime. Generally, we'll place 2 terminals in each location, usually one in the front of the house and in the back of the house. We do that for security reasons as well. People come in, they know that they need cash, they'll grab it out front. We reduce the back and forth, potentially if there's a deal going on in the back and they go, if you spend another $50, you get this and this and this. And then they go back out to the front, they come back to the back. We put another one in the back of the house for them to reduce that back and forth where a lot of issues can happen in the dispensary world where you want to keep safety when you do that. Certain states require like a breakup between the waiting room and where people can actually purchase. Having one in the back also makes it really easy to say, oh yeah, just go hit that ATM right there versus go out front and potentially have to wait in line again for an ATM.
You just hit 2 common mistakes. My next question was going to be about common mistakes. One common mistake you said is doing it yourself. And the second one I heard was having 1 ATM versus 2, because the 2 provides a level of security and actual customer efficiency. What other common mistakes do you see operators making as it comes to cash handling and their ATM program?
I would say a lot of operators will try to handle this with someone's brother-in-law. Someone will get into operations, someone will come in as a new COO operations person and go, let's review this contract, because they've got somebody in the waiting in the wings going, all right, we're going to make this on the side deal. And then all of a sudden now you have an operator that's with the company for 6 months and they're making maybe $1 on the back end from their brother-in-law who they brought in to handle it. And I like making sure that the dispensary, if they're allowed to, based on their bank, based on their state, and if they want to, they get to participate with me because it keeps everybody on the bounce. Because if I can give a dispensary 25 cents to $1, depending on the volumes, now all of a sudden it becomes a revenue stream for them with no capex, no responsibility, and it's just some really nice mailbox money for them. And for me, that makes a really good relationship. And that's really what led me into the great relationship I've had with Safe Harbor all of the years is I'm able to pass that cash flow to the referrals that I get from Safe Harbor. And with that, I've been able to drive a great amount of fun money, hopefully back to you guys over the years too.
Appreciate it, man. Glad to have you as a partner. From a cash flow perspective, as we, educate and tell our audience about managing cash flows expertly, what does a well-run dispensary look like in your mind in terms of cash flow management and ATM handling?
It's changed in the last even 6 weeks. We've been hearing about cashless ATMs and PIN debit getting taken out by Visa and the big card carriers and different back-end super banks that actually turn on all those different systems that allow ATMs to operate. In the cashless world, just in the last 6 weeks, I know my ATMs have gone through the roof because the cashless options are getting shut down. They've actually found a way to pull the terminal IDs that they in the past have been able to hide. I heard a horror story at my local dispensary that I go to. One of their managers told me a guy came in and said, "Hey guys, my credit card bill here says that I spent $350 at a hotel and my wife got this in the mail. And what the hell?" And they go, "Oh, that must be the terminal ID that we're running our transactions through." And that created a very big ball of mess for the dispensary, the card provider, and the ATM provider that was actually allowing those kind of secret transactions to go on. So that's really led, I think, Visa on the charge to send out a lot of cease and desist. And they're also hitting people with fines now too. So for me, I've always been looking for how do we serve the dispensary in a compliant way? ATMs keep everything separate when needed. Different people can participate. And that's really probably the big thing that we have with Safe Harbor is you guys have full access to my back end, which is great. So it gives everybody the idea of who's getting paid, what they're getting paid, and there's a cadence there. With the cashless being on the hot seat right now, there's been one other option. Now, mind you too, and I'm probably unpopular in certain circles, but in the 9 years that we've been doing ATMs, I've never referred a cashless option because I can't have it go down. They go down often. And for me, I can never get the call from a Safe Harbor client saying, "Hey, Vince, what the heck? It's Thanksgiving weekend and our cashless just went down. What the hell?" I put ice in my veins to think about that. So for me, I've always let those dollars go. Recently, though, there is a compliant solution that's come out that is a really cool new apparatus. It's really a micro ATM with a micro cash recycler smart safe at the point of sale. So they actually run the ATM transaction out of a shoebox sized ATM that rides on a shoebox sized cash recycler. And now it's reducing the amount of cash needed for my ATMs. And it's
Hold on, let me make sure
going into the till for them.
So let me make sure this is new. So I want you to say it one more time, right? Because I want to make sure the audience understands what you're saying. If I got it, you're saying, hey, I have a hybrid ATM solution that is effectively a cash recycler that lets me let's say, end user walk away from maybe not compliant solutions or solutions that might get you in trouble to a solution that's more secure. Did I understand that correctly?
It is. And it's the first time in my ATM career that something like this has popped up. So I completely jumped at it full force. The company has been amazing to work with. I'm probably one of their super users and using their product and running it out. They're very much like a traditional ATM unit. It's the size of maybe a large computer terminal that you would have in a home PC. You can put it on a roller. You can put it underneath the cabinet. You can put it on top of the desk where people check out. But it's really cool because it actually transacts the cash for you down to the dollar bill. 5s, 10s, 20s, 100s.
No risk of non-sufficient funds, no risk of chargebacks, no risk of any of that kind of nonsense we deal with every day.
It is ATM that we have shrunk down. It could be on the other side of the room. That's the best part of this, I think, for me conceptually is you're allowed to have an ATM. You are allowed to have a cash recycler smart safe. They just put it into one unit. And now it's reducing the amount of cash that the dispensary even has to take on to deposit, which I know helps the cannabis banks because cannabis banks have different depository restrictions on them. They're not everywhere. So now we reduce the amount of time that the dispensaries need to run cash to the bank and get actual bills in to make change because
I
the
got my mind going there.
denominations actually.
So yeah, you got my mind exploding with thoughts. What does that mean from like right now? The way a dispensary may work is they might have something called a smart safe, where they're depositing money into the smart safe and they get provisional credit for that money, or they get a courier service to pick it up and bring it to their local Fed location. And so I talk to folks every day. Why should I bank with you guys? I got a local branch of some other company, but even that local branch doesn't want you walking into the branch with $100,000, right? They'll take a teller 2 hours of time to count that money. They rather you do the courier service. And are you telling me that two things potentially are impacted here? One, the need for a smart safe, and two, the need for a courier. Am I understanding this right?
It's about four birds with one stone. It allows the client to use their ATM card at the checkout, actually bills coming out in an ATM transaction with a receipt. They could walk away at that point too. So that's where the compliance piece
No
comes.
charging $20 and getting $4 back at the register so that it looks like all of that's got.
It is a straight ATM transaction down to the dollar. So we round up, they round up. That's a way to get around change because I know change is a huge pain in the butt for dispensaries too. Oh, we need quarters, we need dimes. No, thank you. So now all of a sudden, the bud tender is able to not have to handle the cash, put it in the till, make change. Everything is handled by the client. They get a green light from the system. The transaction's complete.
So this is also a fraud prevention tool because the less times people touch money, the less times it walks away.
Yes, sir. Or even just people fat fingering dollars or messing up. Humans will make mistakes, but on this, it's all on the client side. They also, the fun part about this unit, the reason I was hesitant early on is you had to feed each bill in. You're playing a skee ball game. With this new unit that they came out with about 6 months ago, you can feed a full stack of bills in. So a full stack of bills comes out in your ATM transaction with a receipt, and a full stack of bills can go in to make payment into the Smart Safe Cash Recycler.
Wow, really interesting. Love to learn more information on it. I know I saw a demo a couple of weeks ago of the technology. I'm even learning more about it now. Appreciate this. But let's talk about your other business as well, Highly Analytical. You took this ATM footprint, you built Highly Analytical on top of it. I'm assuming I get reports if I work with you and some transparency out of your ATM, but what is Highly Analytical and why'd you build it?
I had always known that I serviced a lot of the large MSOs over the years as they were getting started and ramped up. One of them was Harvest back in the day.
Sure.
So I was lucky enough to be able to serve them as they selected locations, figured out when they were going to open, got the different state requirements to allow them to open their doors, got the build outs done. So now I had this really interesting data set where I went, this is when they first engaged me to let me know where the location was going to be. And this is when they opened their doors. So on the back end, I was thinking, man, if some private equity person wanted to talk to me, I could tell them definitely who is on the ball. And I can tell you, I'll brag about Harvest. The main reason that I will always brag about them is one of their owners was a big construction management firm, one of the owners guys. So all of a sudden he had all of the trades. He knew how to build out. He knew the pricing. He knew the structuring. He knew the city codes. He had the missing piece that a lot of dispensaries miss when they're rolling out multi-state, multi-location. And with that, especially in Arizona or just out of state, knowing how trades work and how to talk to them, it's a different language. So they were able to be probably 3 times faster to open than any other dispensary I've ever really worked with.
Nice.
So with that little secret sauce, I went, man, I better be keeping every single transaction that I've got and keeping it a little ledger for myself. Now I keep it anonymized so different providers aren't called out. But at one point I had about 25 million transactions to look at. So I went and sought out a data scientist. I didn't even know what a data scientist was at that point. And I met my partner, Caleb, and he went, oh, you have the ability to put together an anti-money laundering protocol for the cannabis banks that you serve. And that's really where Highly Analytical was born from, is that idea of going, you have all these transactions, let's look at them and figure out what's in there. He looked at my 25 million and he goes, hey, Vince, I found an anomaly. And I went, no, no anomalies, please. And he goes, here's what happened. You had a transaction. We would have red flags, yellow flags. Yellow flags add up to a red flag because that's how he set it up. And he goes, first yellow flag was you had an ATM operation happen outside of normal business hours. And I went, all right, yeah, I gotcha. And then he came through and he said, and it was for a max pull. So a max pull on ATM, whatever it's set at, might be $500, $600. That's 3% of our pulls. People don't usually pull that kind of cash out. And I went, all right. And then he said, then there were 3 more users that did max pulls, and now you got a red flag. And I went, so out of the normal time, 3 users max pulls. And I felt like I was going to faint. And I go, okay, what dispensary and when was it? And he said, it was April 20th. And I went, okay, we can all relax now. I know what happened. They didn't have cash. People wanted to take advantage of the deal because they're working that day. They're probably buying for friends and family, whatever it was. And they pulled because they were there before work opened, because they had a line out the door, probably outside, because they have huge deals. Yeah. And I called it, and I did some research, and it's exactly what it was. So for me, as an ATM operator, I thought, if I'm a dispensary owner, I want to know if somebody's running a transaction in my store outside of business hours, and I want to be alerted to that. That was really where the anti-money laundering thing kind of kicked in. And then I said, okay, now if we can place this protocol on ATMs, like not my ATMs, but other providers, and say, you're going to submit your transactions each month and who's getting paid out on them. We're going to shine a light on who's getting paid and how much, and where your money's coming and going from. Because a lot of times there's a huge risk out there when you bring in a brother-in-law, where's that cash coming from? All of our cash that we started our company with, my partners had sold their ATM company and had an exit. So we had this large cash infusion where we could have proof of funds and show everyone where it came from. But if you have just some brother-in-law, cool, where did he get that 50 grand from? So that's where this all kind of came together. And then it didn't take off. It was a hard sell. A lot of times I think different parties don't necessarily want to know these things, and there wasn't really a need for it. I created a solution for a problem that I thought there was, and I learned a really good lesson. But through that, my partner Caleb said, so one of my other large clients made me put screens on top of my ATMs because they run ads. And they had some at their existing stores I was taking over. And I whined and cried. I'm like, I'm not a screen guy. We don't put screens up. You're going to make me drill into my machines. It's a pain in the butt. And they go, do you want the deal or not, buddy? And I was like, no, I'm a screen guy through and through. And one thing that they gave me, though, is I'm walking out of a meeting one day and I hear their marketing director go, yeah, we need to get that up and going. We're making about $2,000 to $5,000 a month per store with ads and different things that we're running with the brands. And I went, oh, I have 150 to 300 dispensaries at any given time. I'm a marketing and advertising guy because now I can drive those revenues and run ads. And my partner Caleb said, 1 second, let's run a predictive inventory model to run the ad options to the people that are potentially going to time out on their products. So now the dispensary doesn't have to kill the product. We reach out 2 weeks beforehand and go, hey, you need to run a buy one, get one. It's a $200 ad. You're going to run it, and we're going to give you point of sale points on when it was used, how much it was used, where it was used. And so we could give them actual feedback from the actual point of sale in the metrics that we gave them.
That's pretty cool.
Sounds amazing. We rolled it out. We had an amazing pilot. Curaleaf was one of the first ad buyers. We had an amazing group out here in Arizona that piloted us. They had some really cool results. And again, it was hard to get over the hump. I think that
business lessons in what you said, right? So let's pause for a second, because the first thing you said is you developed a product that nobody needed, right? Which was interesting in and of itself. People do this all the time. Not the market research ahead of spending the money, but the idea or the shiny object ahead of the market research. And you have to do both simultaneously, because you want to be timely in what you're doing, but you also want to know when to pull the plug. This is not going to work. I'm not putting any more money into this. But you went all the way, made a mistake. We always talk about how entrepreneurs learn from their mistakes, and you took something that was a mistake and then turned it into something that is highly profitable for you, which is an advertising business. Now you went from being my ATM guy to being my advertising guy. That's pretty cool. Piloting something with Curaleaf, putting screens on your ATMs and being able to run ads and leveraging what you built in highly analytical to now give me information about what deals I should run and then time that with the advertisement, if I understood that correctly. That's an
Some
incredible technology.
thousand it. It's stop, start, continue, or dump jet fuel on it. And I think people forget the jet fuel part because you might be at a point where you're like, I'm out of gas. I think and then all of a sudden there's a little baby pivot you can do that makes all the difference. And for us, the results that we had in our first pilot run with Highly Analytical, Curaleaf had a 775% return on ad spend in the 3 months that they ran their ads.
Oof. Hopefully they're a client for life.
You would think, but it's hard in this industry. It really is. The dispensary group that we served, because what we did is we looked at every single SKU at every single store, what the run rate on those were, what needed to be bought to make sure you had it, what needed to be blown out because it was going to go bad. So we were working both ends of the funnel for them with an AI overlay, watching and coaching. And in the first 90 days, they made and saved over $180,000 as a result of having the right product and not going out and getting rid of the stuff that needed to go.
It's important stuff. Look, inventory turns for dispensaries is a critical KPI. You need to know what products sell, what products don't sell, how much to order, when to take advantage of a volume discount or where the volume discount might kill you. And so this is interesting information where you can lean into things that or pour jet fuel, as you say, into products that work and back off on products that don't work. How does it work? How does your predictive analytics? You sounds like you fell in love with a smart scientist guy, and he's built some crazy things. And that's how, by the way, that's how entrepreneurs work. They see the problem and then they go build a team to fix the problem. So you're doing great. But how does the system work? What are the inputs and what are the outputs that you can expect if I share my data with you?
I would say in the last year since we've done it, this was a year and a half that we were making the run at this. We slowed it down around January of this year in a good way because the need for the AI backend infrastructure has changed dramatically in the last 3 months. If you've seen anything like Claude Code, OpenClaw, like all of those things where you can have these agents working. So instead of us creating this set agent now, I, as a caveman ex-shot putter, I can now do the things that I used to have to beg Caleb to help me with. And I've become a lot more self-sufficient. And to your point as an entrepreneur, I like that you called that out. Making mistakes is okay. I saw something with Michael Jordan where he was like, everybody knows how many shots I made. They don't know how many shots I missed in practice, though. And that's a better number because being able to fail and dust yourself off as an entrepreneur, ATMs have given me the ability to have a bit of a net because I have a constant income. But I also like trying. I like striving. I like finding new ways and new things. I love the industry. It's been the best thing in my career is being able to be a wildcatter in a new industry because going into a standard field, I was a teacher at one point. I was an at-risk credit recovery high school teacher, and then I became a principal. And, you know, you're set. There's a script, and then you're going to do 30 years and then retire and golf. And I don't really even like to golf. So for me, I need constant kind of stimulation, and I know that about myself. So it's been a gift. I love the industry. I love the people. I have met the most interesting people in our industry, as I'm sure you have too. And the relationships will be things that I can remember and reflect on and go, man, I did some cool stuff and had fun. And I think that's really unique right now in our society.
It's so interesting because I do for years, for about 15 years, I went into high schools and I spoke to people about breaking out of different troubling situations. I grew up in a low-income location. And how do you break out? And what do you have to do different and how to be different? And what you just said is one of the things I talk about, which is, hey, I saw the trajectory, right? I graduated college with an accounting degree. The trajectory was debits and credits for the rest of my life. And maybe being the CFO of a company one day or a partner where every day is a new audit or a new compliance adventure. But it was the same. It was crazy, but it was the same. And the question is, how do you break out of that? How do you say, this is what I think is my purpose? And then if I have this entrepreneurial bug, how do I achieve that particular purpose? And so really cool that you're talking about those types of things because you're saying, hey, I was on this teacher path and the teacher path goes to the principal path, maybe superintendent of schools one day, but that's where it stops. And that wasn't for you. So you made a change. That's amazing, man. One of the things you mentioned to me before the call was the integration of AI and the idea of fraud protection. And even during this call, you talked about anti-money laundering. Maybe you can lean in a little bit on that and how you guys are using AI. You talked about Claude Code a moment ago. Not many people know what that is. It's only been out there for about 2 months, but it's giantly popular, and I played around with it just the other day. Maybe you can lean into that a little bit and share with the audience some of your experiences.
With the advent of a lot of these new technologies, Claude Code, Claude Bot, all the different versions of taking this AI interface and putting it on an actual computer terminal and letting it run and giving it a task and letting it figure things out, that's been a big change in the last 3 months, to your point, where we've pivoted on highly analytical now because of the flexibility and the computing power and AI power that's changed. Now we don't have to put any one dispensary into a set protocol. My goal most of the time is when I get there, and it comes from my education background, but when you're serving the exceptional student, you look for the best tool, at the best time, with the least restriction or pain for that learner. Depending, you meet the learner where they are. So when I go in with a dispensary group, they might say, Vince, we're in Google Suite. And I go, perfect, we're going to start there. And we can build out amazing things behind Google's walled garden of security, because you got to be secure, number one. So if I don't have to take their data outside of systems that they already have, that's where we start. And we look for simple little things like, hey, when you have meetings, we're going to have Google Meet record the meeting, make a transcript, drop it into Google Drive. And they go, okay. And I go, once it's in Google Drive now, you can pull it over to Google Sheets and you can put together like a RACI chart, who's responsible, accountable, consulted, and informed. So now we're working in on a little bit of that kind of entrepreneurial operating system just by tweaking the existing tools that they have. So for me, it's less about selling my SaaS or my AI startup. It's more of helping them use their existing tools in a comfort place where they're used to it. And then within their organization, I can do coaching with their CFO and go, all right, great. Now you've got this and you've got it in Google Sheets. Let's run Gemini at it. Let's pull this data, remove any kind of personal identifiable data, and we can put it into this other AI and play with it. So you can run things now without exposing your data. And that's where I've found a lot more joy, because it goes back to my teaching and learning days where I'm getting to help people. Because if you try and give a Ferrari to a 16-year-old, it's cool. They might be able to learn how to drive it. They'll never learn how to service it. They'll never know the responsibilities that come with having a Ferrari. If you know anybody that has Ferraris, they usually don't love them as much as you think they would, because they take a lot to run. But if I can give a kid a Camaro, teach them how to respect it, use it, you get all the features out of it. The price range right now too with AI is they're already paying for the Google Suite. So now I cut their price on an AI excursion by 100th potentially. And I've made it easy for them to get into the pool. It's not scary. It's tools they already use. And then we can start talking about different agents and things as they've been in and been able to play with it. Because then they'll come to me and go, Vince, what if in each of our Google meetings, if we could tag a certain person and then that goes to a sheet and then we can then track X, Y, and Z? I go, now you're cooking. So it starts getting them to engage with it and get excited about it too, which is a key to AI, is people really understanding it for them. Because you might walk into somebody who hits hammer and nails all day and you go, let me show you this thing called a nail gun, buddy. And they're like, oh. And then all of a sudden he goes, but sometimes I have to use a screw. I go, there's a tool for that too, man. Watch this. So there's really cool ways to put the right tool in the right person's hand with the least amount of uptick. Because if you have a user that's, let's say, 65, 45, 25, they're going to have different experiences with technology. So you meet them where they're at. And that's where I really have blended my background in education. And it's fun. I didn't think we would talk about my school days in here, but I really appreciate that.
We bring it out, man. You talked about an interesting topic in AI, which is stacking AIs. It's not good enough today, even though AI is relatively new technology. It's not good enough to just have a subscription to Claude or have a subscription to Gemini, because they all have specific purposes, right? You might want a subscription to Sono and Claude and Gemini, and one talks to the other. We got used to things like Zapier. That was a workflow management tool that said, if something happens in this system, make it also appear in this other system, or do an activity in this other system. But when you start out, you can do that with AIs. Hey, when this AI does this one thing and it drops it into a Google Sheet, this other AI picks up and works on that Google sheet. And so it's a really incredible situation. I just programmed something last weekend. I'll say I programmed it. I wrote a nice prompt and Claude Code programmed it. And we were challenged with this idea of, hey, every time we have to update my 10K or 10Q or a number changes, we've got to retick and tie this entire document. Can I have one sheet where I put all the numbers in, where it automatically updates my 10K and 10Q? Now, they have systems out there called Workiva and other giantly expensive programs. And you focus in on what you really need, because I don't need the full suite of their programs. And you focus in on what you really need and you build an app. And that app costs me nothing other than my subscription to Claude and having access to Claude Code. And the team is now testing it now to see if it works and it can make our program more efficient in the future. So totally different topic from ATMs. So I'll bring it back to ATMs. But at the end of the day, this is exciting stuff. And I love to hear how operators and ancillary companies are working with AI to make things more efficient and more profitable for them over time. I was an operator. At one point, I had 52 dispensaries under management, and every single dispensary has its unique environment and its uniqueness and why people and customers go to those dispensaries. But you made me think differently just now. You said, hey, I took my ATM company, made it into an advertising company that made it into a highly analytical AI company. What do you think operators should be doing? And as you walk the hallways of these operators, what are some ideas that are percolating that might shift the industry over time?
I would say that AI agents will augment and expand and be force multipliers for humans. Humans will always be in the loop. It's important to have humans in the loop. But take me for an example. I love talking to my AIs. And
Yeah.
I got, again, shot putter hands here. I got big meat hooks and it's hard to get on a keyboard. So when I'm able to dictate, then all of a sudden I have this conversation, and conversation is different than directing. You get a call back and it goes, hey, that's a great point. Have you thought about this? So even just having a trusted AI that I've worked with for 2 years that knows me, it knows all the conversations that I've had with it. And a weird example, I use Perplexity. I cannot recommend Perplexity enough to people. It is cost effective. It has tasks. You can create agents. It's got the whole stack in it. And you can plug it into your Gmail. You can plug it into all the things that you might want to bring data into. I was researching like a protein powder, whatever. My son's going to start playing football and he wants to get more protein in him, but I want to make sure he gets the very best protein. So I started researching on Perplexity, what would be the best protein for a 14-year-old that wants to do this and this. And throughout the message though, it popped up because I talked to it about my health stuff. And it says, hey, Vince, just a heads up, this one has an increased amount of potassium and sodium. And based on your diet, you need to watch that as a heads up. And I was like, oh, I didn't even think about that. So there's a lot of things in there where it's going to poke you in areas that you might forget. And our brains are amazing, but what about having Terry AI? If you created a Terry AI that was you in an AI form that you bounce everything off of, now it's people, issues, ideas. And then when you come into it with something new, it's drawing from a million different ways that your brain might not connect, but it's giving you this force maximization to go, oh, but you remember that time when your grandma spoke a different language and then you thought it was one thing and she thought it was the other? You might have that going on with this employee. You guys might be just speaking a different language, but blah, blah, blah. And you go, makes sense. I think for the operators out there, one of the key things that I gave one of my clients was they took their ATMs in-house. And I said to them, I go, you better separate those funds. You don't want to mix your funds with that ATM cash. And they go, we have a provider that's going to have separate funds. We're going to run them. They'd run their ATMs before. And I said, I'd love to create something to help you understand the service needs of your ATMs. Because I hate to say it, they'll probably be watching this too. So guys, don't kill me. But I wanted them to know the pain that they were in for, because the cassettes are hard to manage. The keypads go out. The card readers go out. There's supply chain issues with China sometimes with the keypads, with getting a specific Gen Mega X, Y, or Z. So I put together an enormous platform for them with predictive analytics to say, you're running these ATMs at these locations, and here's how, because they could just drop in their ATM data into it and would feed it all. And then it would start giving them the and thens. That would probably be the biggest thing I would share about AI to all the operators and anyone watching. Yes, you can create dashboards and you can create those, but think in the term of and then. The dashboard pulls up that I'm doing this many RPMs on my ATM and I haven't replaced a keypad in 3 months. It's going to raise its hand and go, hey, make sure you've got 2 extra keypads because this one might be going out. Because these ATMs, a lot of times they are Camaros that people are running like racetrack cars. So you have to turn the tires. You've got to deal with the transmission and just be ready for it to keep it up. And that's where we're really good. We've got 15, 18 years of knowing exactly how a Gen Mega Onyx is going to do X, Y, and Z. So we've got our eyes on it. So for that client, we had 3 years of 100% uptime up until before they took it over. We had one machine go down and then the other machine had a technical issue. We were down for an hour. And I was horrified because I know how much it impacts a dispensary when they go down. So I created this whole system for them to manage that as we were transitioning it over. Now, it was also a way for me to point out, here come the horrors and headaches that you guys never saw me deal with because I am a white glove kind of service provider. The answer is always yes. I pick up my phone every day of the year because it allows me to live the life I live. But all of a sudden now I've got SEAL Team 6 running our ATMs.
Yeah.
So for me, I wanted them to have a little bit more of a jump start on the pains that might be coming to them. And that's a really fun thing for an operator to have, especially to go, okay, I can create my own dashboard, but what do I really want it watching for? And I want it to poke me. And I might want it to poke my ops manager, or I want to put together a purchasing AI because, man, my purchasing managers come and go. They're expensive to hire. They're expensive to train. And then they leave for $2 more an hour on me. Great. Create an AI that lasts. One of the big products that we're brainstorming right now is a bit of a time capsule employee. Take your CFO, COO, whatever you have, and then have an AI watching every email, every meeting transcript, everything that they are doing. And for me, where that came into my brain was a lot of these dispensaries, like you've got to put in the XYZ request for permitting up in Mojave County, and it's got to go this certain way, and you got to make sure to ask for Samantha when you do it. All that tribal knowledge goes out the door when people leave. But when you create these legacy AI clients, now all of a sudden you can talk to that person after they left and said, hey, we've got to do the Mojave deal. Any terms and tips? Or it can pop out automations and, hey, don't forget to make sure to renew the lease and make sure to renegotiate it. Fight them on this term and this term, try and get more parking. Cool. Like Susan, who's been at the company for 5 years, might know that. But Joe, who's taken over, has no idea. So this continuation of knowledge is, I think, one of the cool wildernesses that we're driving into now for our clients too.
Now you're even getting into HR, man. You're getting into the idea of how do you retain institutional knowledge over a longer period of time than the employee life cycle, right?
Yes,
So
sir.
that's an HR question. So we've talked about a lot today. Let me summarize because I think this is an exceptional conversation. You started out in the ATM business. You're a large provider of ATMs in the cannabis industry. You've migrated the ATMs into an advertising business as an entrepreneur. Saw that you can jump into that. You tried it highly analytical to try to do something. Didn't work the way you intended, but pivoted it, right? And now you're in this space of providing data intelligence to dispensary owners and giving them more access to information, AI coaching, things like that. And then you develop this kind of new way called cash recycling, a semi-POS checkout system that is compliant, that allows them to eliminate things like courier services, safe vaults, their existing process for accepting credit cards and debit cards, or just debit cards, let's say. All of that and wrapped into kind of an ATM thought process. All of that coming together in kind of a robust solution for cash management for dispensaries across the country. Is there any place you don't work in terms of your network?
It's a whirlwind, and I think this has kept me pretty busy. Thank you for pointing that out, because at different times, I also work in dropout recovery and prevention out here in Arizona still, developing AI tools for our students and staff. But
Nice.
if I say anything more, my wife will put me in a headlock because I
Yeah.
take on too much. But I've never really left education. It feels good. It fills up that part of me that needs to give back and understand that I had everything going for me as a youth. I had great parents, great teachers. I was all sports, athlete of the year, blah, 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 all the things. And I was born on third, and I know I didn't hit a triple, so I owe. And really give back and understand. And it allows me to stay current with a lot of the kids out there. They're doing real cool stuff with AI, right? And 15, 16-year-olds. And I'm going, how did you do that? So it's a fun world out there, and I would encourage anyone to jump into AI. A lot of them, they're very much like the superheroes. ChatGPT is going to be your Captain America. Perplexity is Doctor Strange. Claude is a little bit like Beast if you're an X-Man guy. So
Yeah.
they're all different. They all have different strengths and weaknesses. You
A
get
little
to
blue and a little hairy. Is that what you're trying to say?
What's that?
A little blue and a little hairy?
Exactly. Claude is very much like a college professor that's 10 years in the field and really dang smart. But you might want a Wolverine in the mix to just get it done. Now, I won't even talk about Grok because Grok is unreal. If you need to create a visual or a video, you want to bring a picture together, Harry Potter, you know how they show the video and then they come alive?
Yeah.
Do that in Grok. It's amazing. And it's not really restricted by a lot of copyright stuff. So you're like, hey, I want Taylor Swift riding a unicorn and throwing dollars in the air. It'll make it for you. It's pretty cool.
Incredible, isn't it? Hey, Vince, thank you very much for coming on live with us and discussing this with us this morning. Lots more conversations ahead of us. Through our partnership with ATM Pros, we're helping our clients improve the cash access, reduce friction, build more structured financial operations, and emerging technologies and take advantage of emerging technologies as they come to bear. To our listeners, thank you for joining us on another episode of Banking on Cannabis. Again, if you've enjoyed today's discussion, please subscribe, leave a review, and share the episode with others in the industry. This was great. Thank you for listening, and see you next time on Banking on Cannabis.
Thanks, Terry.